Sorry about that, my mic was off. So you got to listen to a little bit of the music and watch my lips move. So now you should, the music was on. So yeah, I had a little bit of music here. I'm just going to stop the playlist here. And I hope you enjoyed it. I call it the memo rail. Tonight's the memo rail. For many, it's a memorial of Christ's death. For a lot of us, it's a memo rail. A lot of us have been derailed. So, in a sense, we think of it. We think of the memorial. I think of it. I thought of it every year. And it wasn't until last year I started doing the research. And for perhaps a lot of you guys out there, you're quite quick. You know, we're going to feature one fella I found on the Amazon. If you look where JWs write books, we're going to look at one guy that wrote a lot of books, an ex-JW. He was only in for 3 years. He was a smart one. And then he got the heck out. But he's doing a lot in the background helping everyone. And I think that's fabulous. So we're going to talk about him in a bit. For me, I got in at the same time kind of he did, 18. And I stuck it out for 30 years. Then I get out and I don't fix my mind. And so this fella has some books on debriefing. And that's why we're one of the reasons we're going to feature some of his work. Now, on the positive note, I want to show everyone just a little bit. We did a survey on, and some of you may have responded to our survey already. We asked on our surveys, where am I here? Community, right here. And so the surveys are quite, I don't know if you've ever seen what comes back on a survey. I can give you a quick look here. Screen capture. Okay, there we go. So there's a survey. And this is what the survey looks like. So we put out a survey, and thank you very much to all you guys subscribers out there for responding in such quick notice. We just stuck this out a few hours ago, and we already got a lot of responses. So I kind of wanted to know, you know, what the audience is. 61% of the audience, I believe in God or spirituality. 18% of the audience, I believe in no God. So that would mean atheist or mostly science. 12% is not sure what to believe anymore. I'm kind of like that. 4%, I believe in a pantheon of gods, the Sumerian tablets. I'm kind of interested in that also. And the last question was, I believe we came from aliens and they're watching us. And I kind of wonder about that too. Like, how do we know, right? Maybe if you're an atheist, you could believe in the aliens too. Don't know. You know, it's funny when we come out of the Jehovah's Witness religion, we kind of, for a lot of us, we don't know what to believe in. And belief is an interesting word when you research belief. And a lot of research has went into belief. Like, is this something that we develop as we get older in time? We develop belief, we're taught belief, or is it something that we're born with? And so I asked that question, and we had some interesting stuff come up. So we're going to talk about that in a bit, but I don't want to show you all my secrets. So I'm going to screen capture you. You can look at our studio for a bit. We're going to talk about belief, and we're going to look at a couple of articles on belief, and mainly with children. For instance, one of the articles out of the mouths of babes. Do children believe because what they're told to by adults? And it says the evidence may suggest otherwise. Stick with us here and you will learn the answer. The next articles, because I don't like to put everything in one article. I don't know about you, when you research, I like to look at multiple articles from multiple places and see if they collaborate, if there's sharing of information. And there actually is. A lot of people share each other's information, so it's quite interesting. what we can learn if we put forth the topic. Now, is it natural to believe in God? And I thought, a good place to go is these big learned centers, right? And this is Oxford. This is an Oxford study, whether that means anything or not. Now, then we have the Jehovah's Witness, Memorial of Jesus' Death. And then we're going to go and take a look at this fella I found on the internet. Okay, so now getting back to where I'm at. So 61% of the audience believes in spirituality or God. Spirituality is kind of a broad subject. I didn't want to nail it down to the Christian religion at all. But, God, what's wrong with believing in God? Now, I didn't want to narrow it down to how many believe in the Christian religion and how many are kind of really Orthodox Christian either. I didn't really, it doesn't matter. Not in this study. Now, 61% and 12% aren't sure, so there's potentially 73% of our audience are potentially Christian. So that's what I thought it was fitting tonight, that we take a look, and potentially a lot of our audience is ex-Jehovah's Witness, right? So now that's why I thought it would be good to show this site tonight. And I know when I left, and perhaps some of you are in the religion right now, or perhaps some of you are PMO, perhaps some of you have a mate that's in, and you're just love your mate to dear death, and you're there and you're supporting because you're just the right person. You're just a loving person. That's a good place to be. I think that's just a good place to be. Whether you're atheist or whether you're not, I think the loving part of it's good. And when I think of Jesus, I think of a lot of things. I don't necessarily think of Jesus as just being all love, but I think that Jesus was he was a man of action. He was an apostate. I want to hear your comments here. Now I got my mics on, and I want to hear your comments on this. Was Jesus an apostate? I think he was. And I talk about that on some of my other videos. I talk about Jesus kind of like that. I don't want to, he wasn't against God, but he did not mention Yahweh or Jehovah. Well, Jehovah wasn't invented then, but Yahweh. So if Yahweh was supposed to be the big God that we're all worshiping, why didn't Jesus mention Yahweh at least once? Now, I've mentioned my dad, Raymond, lots of times, but I mostly call him Dad in our language here in Canada. Maybe some call him, say, Father. They refer Abba. I don't know. All over the world, we refer to our father figure, usually our father, our fleshly father, in a certain way. But I would be proud to talk to people about my dad, and I'd use his name. And, oh, you don't know my dad? He's Raymond. So and so, and my dad, this is my dad. I'd be proud to talk about my dad. My dad's no longer with us. In fact, when I quit the Jehovah's Witness religion was the very day my dad died. And it was March 1st, 2012. And that's the day I decided to quit. And I thought there was a number of things that happened that day I can't talk about. But I will talk about a lot of the hidden stuff in the future, but not in Memorial Night. Now, what I do want to talk a little bit more about is Jesus and how he didn't even mention, if Yahweh was his dad, his father, didn't mention him, not once. Now, if you study the Bible closely, and we're going to look at this scholar that has many books on Amazon tonight, a little later on, and he has a help site. And this fellow was actually in the writing committee of the Watchtower right here. He was working for the writing committee in New York. And a lot of his writings are very, really good writings. And the Watchtower would recruit some of the best writers. So it's no doubt that some of these writers are on the outside now. They're looking in and they're saying, hey, I can use my abilities, but I can use them to tell people the real truth. And that's what I think is fabulous. That's when we talk about being a survivor or a victim. I think that's part of it. I think part of it is telling our story. Part of it is when we get to where we can talk about our story and kind of laugh about it a little bit, and but yet say, you know what, I'm putting my story out there because I think that it could help a lot of people. And I think that's important. And I think that's part of healing. That's what I'm feeling, at least. So the story I'm going to be talking about tonight is going to be one of our very first real survivor stories on this channel. And we'll talk about this in a bit. But first of all, I wanted to talk in respect of the 72% of our audience. I want to talk about the memorial of Jesus' death. And if I was to remember Jesus tonight, I would think about him as the guy that went in and turned over the money tables of the religion of his day. That's one of the things I think about Jesus as. Now, I think he stood up to the leaders of his time. He stood right up to them and told them right to their face. He called them hypocrites and stuff. That's what it's written in and keeping in mind, if you're an atheist and maybe you have good reason, because what the research I've done, the Bible has so many holes in it. But when we do look at all the holes in it, perhaps some of the story isn't quite the way it really was back in the day. Perhaps there's a lot missing. Perhaps the story of the Bible was tailored. And we think of Paul's ministry, and we think of the Romans and how the Roman Catholicism took over. And there's a lot of stuff even in the Vatican that's kind of hidden. I don't know, it's available. You can kind of get special passes, go in and look at it if you can read all those languages. But to you and I, the common person, we're kind of sitting on the sidelines waiting. Books come out, books of Enoch, books of Mary, but from what I'm learning so far, Jesus, there's some stuff about Jesus we don't really know, if we're just going to use the Bible as our gauge. And so there's other things. But what I do know about Jesus, he seemed to be concerned about the poor. Now, I want to show you one of the things when I was about a year ago and I was going through a waking up period, and I noticed a lot of YouTubers online, a lot of them become atheist, and they said, we're just done with it. We're done with religion. I couldn't figure that out. Here I am. I left the religion. I go 10 years, not even really fixing my head, just kind of checking in with my friend every year to see if the end was coming at the assembly or the special talk at the memorial. You're kind of halfway believing part of that crap, and but pissed off, because of what happened. So we go through life, and then in my case, I'm still didn't fix my head. I have a thick skull, I guess. But if there really is a God of the universe, he took it and he just hit me with a bat and he said, okay, you're going to wake up now? And that's when they demonized me, and that really hurt. That hurt. And just like, what have I done to be demonized? Why did you guys, who gives you the right? I just gave you a Bible study. Like, who gives you the right to demonize me? And it really hurt. And so I whined about it for 2 years. All the way through the virus, I whined about this. My good wife, put up with it. Finally, one day, she says, enough is enough. Write it down. And so I wrote it all down and started writing. And that was the first start of my waking up. And when I was waking up, I began to look at all these videos. And I was wondering, is Jesus even real? Like, is any of this stuff real? Is it all fake? And now where I'm at now, and it's only about a year or so, I kind of stand back and I look at all the religions on earth, and I look at them as horse and buggy. It's a thing of the past, folks. But it doesn't mean that we can't observe these celebrations, like the memorial, Christ's death. And so then there's nothing wrong with it. If you want to be Christian, you can. If you want to be Hindu, you can. I guess I spent 30 years trying to be I thought a Christian, but really, when you look at the Jehovah's Witness religion, we weren't Christians, we were Jehovians. We followed Jehovah. It was always about Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah. And not so much about Jesus, except on Memorial Evening. And then on Memorial Evening, we were kept separate. We were the great crowd, right? So we were separated from really Jesus and his brothers. So we were kind of at a distance. I don't know about you, but we had one little old lady in our congregation that took the emblems every year. And I would go out in service with the elders because I was pioneering at the time. And one of the elder pioneers would say to me, well, I don't know if, some people take it because they were Catholic before and it didn't quite get out of them. Like this is how they would talk. And this little old lady. So then, to give you a long story short, because it's kind of funny, I moved into this congregation and that's what I asked. I was regular pioneering, moved in. And because this congregation would have never appointed me. I got appointed regular pioneer in the other congregation. They were easier going on guys like me. So I said I wanted to be a regular pioneering, but I'm moving. And they said, where are you moving to? And I said, I'm moving to that congregation. Well, that congregation apparently had a really bad reputation. They were all self-righteous. Very, very pompous, very orthodox Jehovah's Witnesses. Always on the assembly parts, always self-righteous, and so on and so forth. So I think they gave me the pioneer ticket because they knew I was going in there and it was going to be a battle. And it was a battle because I was very redneckish as far as the elite goes. So, but anyways, I would ask this brother, he was the presiding overseer, and that was at the beginning. And I said, well, so what's the big deal? She takes the emblem. She's anointed. And, really, her son doesn't even go to the meetings, like, come on, really. And so this is how the elders would talk, or this elder would talk, which I would assume would be how the whole body would think, but that's not necessarily so. But anyways, this one elder would talk to me like this. And so then I thought, well, I'm going to invite that old lady and that old sister and her son over for supper one night. So I invited them over for supper one night. We had a beautiful supper. And I asked her, I said, what does it feel like to be anointed? We had this chit chat and she was so humble. She didn't say nothing. And her son, so I asked him, I said, why aren't you going to the meetings and stuff like that? And I wanted to know, right? I was really curious. And he didn't say much, but I got it. If they were too self-righteous in that congregation. So to make a long story short, I served my time in that congregation, regular pioneer, put in my 3.5 years. They gave me the stop preaching order later on. I'll cover some of that on my poor pioneer stories. But we have about 13 episodes to go. But anyways, on this story about this elder, because this won't be in those poor pioneer stories, he says to me at the end of my term, I says to him, I want to know why. I made a meeting with him. So I went over to his house. This is just before I moved out of the congregation. And I said, Brother Righteous, I want to know why you persecuted me for so much in this congregation. And he says, because you never invited me over for supper. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He says, we invited you over for supper, but you never invited us over. And I said, well, I just don't have anything in common with you. The kids don't really like you, to be honest with you. Like I just told them what it was. I said, we had Sister Anointed over for supper and her son, who you guys never invite over. We invited the lowly ones over. And he never said nothing. And I laughed at him and I moved out. And that was the end of it. And when I basically walked away because I was fed up with it. But it doesn't mean that we're fed up with Jesus, because I think he was done with it too. He was done with the pompous religious a-holes of his day. And they were so pompous. They were so self-righteous. They were always trying to trap him into stuff. But he told them the way he saw it. He tipped over the money tables. He was an apostate of his day to the religions of his day, the religion that he was raised in. All his life, he was raised for 30 years in this religion. So I say, I was Christ-like. I spent all that time in false religion in Jehovah's Witness because 30 years, Jesus spent 30 years in it. And then he turned over the money table. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm Christ-like. So that's my excuse to the governing body. They have become a greedy organization. They're now involved in money. We watched the Ramapo project unfold and how they now have this $168 million beautiful pad for the movie stars. Think of it this way. Everyone in Ramapo, they'll have to grow real beards. These will be brothers, elite brothers, pioneer Bethelites. It will be a privilege to go to Bethel now. They're going to take the focus off end times, and it'll all be about movies, making movies. And if you get elected, if you're one of the elite, you'll get one of those pads. Now, I did the math. Those pads are worth about 300,000 US per pad. They have all electric charge stations. It's all electric. It's all off grid. And I guarantee you that the next fad that they'll pull in, and all be donated money, will be electric cars. Those electric cars are expensive. And they'll all have electric cars running back and forth and charging them on those charging stations. Mark my words. That's where this organization is going. It wants to get into the movie business. So they're going to take the focus off end times, perhaps lighten up on it a bit, lighten up on the apostates. And they're all, you see in this picture here, they're going to grow beards at Ramapo. Ramapo is going to be a different group of Jehovah's Witnesses. It'll be the elite, the movie stars. We had some videos on this way at the beginning, and I went back and looked at some of my 6-month-old stuff, and it's pretty accurate, I think. But everyone's going to have a beard. Now, what they're going to do, I think, is they're going to pull in beards. It's going to be one of the next moves. They're going to pull back in beards. People will start growing beards. And beards are fashionable now. And Russell Rutherford, the Jehovah's Witnesses will do whatever's fashionable. Norway comes along. We understand from our apostate partners, Goat Lake Personality, that they have checked the box in Norway saying that we're not going to discriminate. That's yet to be seen. That's some of the news that's happening. But in today, when I think of Jesus, I think that I am like Jesus. Like, I'm not trying to be pompous or self-righteous or anything, but I think Jesus had a tough time back then. And I was watching some of the other apostate films, and it's tough if you're protesting. I was looking at Goat Lake. He said Goat Lake Personality was out there protesting at the assembly, and he got gut punched from behind. And then you got to blur everyone's faces out when you're videotaping it, so it's kind of tricky. So we were on with Rick Fearon tonight. He was protesting. So all the power to everyone doing it. My best protest is right here on the YouTube, doing my work. But again, when I put the ring on my wife's finger, and we don't wear the rings on the farm here, by the way, but I'm married and very solidly married. I love my dear wife. But we talk about everything, and we are like one. And now that I started opening up about a year ago and getting all this gangrene, this poison out of my mind, she says, I'm actually not that bad of a guy. Who would have known? So, sometimes, and then we're going to talk about a debriefing and how important it is to get a debriefing done. If you're coming out of the Jehovah's Witness religion, or you're in, or you're wanting to come out, you're not sure, debriefing is so important. But you don't have to leave everything behind. We think of what Jesus did. He did some tough stuff. He went up against it, like goat-like personalities, got gut punched. It makes you nervous. I was watching one of the other apostate shows, and he said that he got put in jail. And not because of what he did, but because of what some other guy did. So it's really tricky. I checked here. You check with the police. Now in Alberta, protesters have a bad name because they blocked off our rails. Right here, right next door here, they blocked off the railway tracks to our whole country. And the government, it shut down our country for like a long time. So protesters are not looked on favorably here. So we have to be careful. I think what you're doing in the US is really good with Be Free. You've got the permits well in advance. You go into the parliament. Here in Canada, what they like us to do is get on with these electronic protests. That's what I'm doing. You'll see at the bottom of this, all of our videos, I have the Canadian link. And you go to my Canadian protest. The numbers are growing each day. So thank you very much for all of your support. And you don't have to be ex-Jehovah's Witness. All we're asking, and you don't, even if you're Jehovah's Witness, all we're saying in this protest, in our protest, is if a religion is discriminatory or discriminates, why are we treating them like a charity? Because it's costing our country like billions of dollars in money, taxpayers' money. And 70% of us, pardon me? Yeah, so a lot of us don't go to church. And why are we paying for it? So anyways, this is kind of, Jesus protested that back in his day. Turned over the money tables. It said a lot. Now we're going to move on. We have a lot of people on. We're going to do our own memorial, and we're going to leave it here. I have a special guest that we're going to do the memorial with. So I hope you have your wine. You brought your wine. Now it could be any kind of a wine, because that's what Jesus said to do. He says every year, he says, let's talk about having wine together. Now, I was talking to you a little bit. Is Jesus even real? That was one of my questions when I was waking up. And virtually all scholars of antiquity accept Jesus as real. And that's kind of interesting. Now, I was going to read this to you just while we're on this. It says, reconstructions of the historical Jesus are based on the Pauline epistles and the Gospels, while several non-biblical sources also support his historical existence. So history says Jesus was real. It says, since the 18th century, 3 separate scholarly quests for the historical Jesus have taken place, each with distinct characteristics and developing new and different research criteria. Scholars differ about the beliefs and teachings of Jesus, as well as the accuracy of the biblical accounts, with 2 events being supported by nearly universal scholarly consensus. And that's there's 2 events that everyone agrees on. So there was a lot of things that are said about Jesus, but the 2 things they say is that Jesus was baptized and Jesus was crucified. Everyone agrees on that. Historical Jesus scholars typically contend that he was a Galilean Jew and living in a time of messianic and apocalyptic expectations. So the Essenes, and if you do some of the research I was reading on, there was a lot of people expecting Jesus to come. Some scholars credit the apocalyptic declarations of the Gospels to Jesus, to him, while others portray his kingdom of God as a moral one, as a moral kingdom, and not an apocalyptic in nature. So there's probably a study there. Now, the portraits of Jesus that have been constructed through history using these processes have often differed from each other and from the image portrayed in the gospel accounts. So there you go. A lot of what we probably are reading in the Bible, like there's no history to back it up. So some of it it can be backed up, but probably very little of it. So it goes on to say, such portraits include that of Jesus as an apocalyptic prophet, charismatic, a healer, a cynic philosopher, a Jewish Messiah, a prophet of social change, and rabbi. There's little scholarly agreement on a single portrait nor the methods needed to construct it, but there are overlapping attributes among the various portraits, and scholars who differ on some attributes may agree on others, and some may agree on others, right? So it sounds to me like there's a lot of different opinions about who this Jesus guy really was. So some of them include Jesus being an apocalyptic prophet. So in religion, a prophet or prophetess is an individual who is regarded as being in contact with a divine being and is said to speak on behalf of that being. So you notice Jesus didn't talk again. I mentioned he didn't talk about Yahweh or Jehovah, as the Jehovah's Witnesses know. So he spoke of God. And if we break apart the Bible, it's almost like the Old Testament God is different than the New Testament God. Like the Old Testament God is a God of war. Yahweh is a God of war. But in the New Testament God is a God of love. Elohim, God of love. So it's like there's two different Bibles, 2 different gods. And I think there's a lot of room for unveiling further as we look deeper and as everyone studies this more and things are unveiled now, that we may find that could be a pantheon of gods. And then we go back to the Sumerian tablets, what's written in stone. They could have changed what's written in paper, but what's written in stone would suggest that there were 7 gods and that Yahweh was one of the gods. So it's interesting when we research all of this, and maybe Jesus didn't really have anything to do with Yahweh. Maybe he came to bring love. Maybe he was a different kind of a God right from Elohim. And then, I don't know, it's just the way my mind goes. If I'm going to go down the Bible tract, if I'm going to go down that track, then I look at Revelation 1 and verse 20. You remember what that says? Revelation 1 and verse 20. It talks about the 7 congregations. Revelation talks about Jesus having the 7 stars in his hand. Maybe that's the 7 pantheon gods, 7 stars. Who knows? That's the problem with the Bible. Who knows? I don't think anybody really knows. Everyone claims that they have the truth. They claim that, Russell claimed it, Rutherford claimed it, the governing body today claims it, the Mormons claim it, the Seventh-day Adventists claim it, the Hutterites even claim that they have the truth. Dutch Reformed, they all do. And why shouldn't they? Everyone wants to believe what they're doing is the truth, is the right thing to do. Or do they? Well, today we've identified that Jesus was a real person. Virtually all scholars of antiquity accept that Jesus was a historical figure, and any attempts to deny his historicity have been consistently rejected. So, it's fringe theory for you to believe that Jesus wasn't real. More scholars on earth today believe that Jesus was historical and was real. So let's say I go with that. I'm going to go with that. If I go with Jesus, he has 2 sides to him. I see the 2 sides to him. I see he came up to clean things up. And he could have been aggressive, could have been abrupt to people, the Jews. It appears that he was even abrupt to family members, telling them, "Oh, go let the dead bury the dead." But I don't know, who wrote that part of the Bible then? It doesn't sound like Jesus. It just, I don't know. He was very compassionate. The prostitute, but then to say, go let your family bury the dead? Like, isn't that a responsibility to look after your family, right? So then you start to question, well, was that the Jesus? Was that really the Jesus? Or is that one of these other Jesus figures, that Paul or whoever wrote the Bible? You see, whoever wrote the Bible needed things to look a certain way to control people. Like, I believe the Bible was written to control people. And that's why I think it's horse and buggy. It's the thing of the past. Maybe it was necessary. It looks like it was. Because everyone wants something to believe in. And now we're in a different time. We've evolved. I think we're evolving kind of as a human race a bit. We're looking back. So there's no use, when we look back at the Jehovah's Witness or our journey, there's no use getting upset about it. Because I think we were all made to believe in something. But first of all, let us finish our memorial to Jesus. We know that he was real. The Bible does say to recognize this event before sundown. Now, we're probably a little late all over the earth, but I don't believe I don't take all these rules as hard and fast. The Jehovah's Witnesses like to believe that everything's hard and fast. That's what they like to lead us to believe. In the Bible, Jesus says, "You're all my brothers." So we're all his brothers, not just 144,000. They got that number wrong. It's not. We have articles on this, and we're going to show you more articles on this from this new piece of research information, this new site I found, and it's called what is it called? We're going to go and look at it here. Watchtower Help Admin. It's called the Watchtower Help Club. Have you ever heard of that? The Watchtower Help Club. And this is put together by that writer that used to be a writer in the Watchtower, and he came out. He's got several books online. We're going to look at some of his work because I think it's really important work. So first of all, you don't need any kind of bread. I think just any bread would be good. So I just kind of have some cheese with my bread, and I'm going to take it out. We're going to zoom in. We all have Zoom, so we're going to zoom in a special guest here tonight, and he's going to do the memorial, get us going on this memorial thing. Okay, here we go. I'm going to get us in. We're going to zoom in right now. Okay, I'm going to get out of the picture here. I'm in the background here, and I'm going to turn my mic off.
My name is Bernard, and I'm from Vernovia. Yes, we will do a reading from the wise book. The wise book of Proverbs, chapter 27. This was a wise man who wrote this book, and he gained his insight from God. So let us together read God's wisdom, penned by this wise king, some call Solomon. Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, and not thine own lips. A stone is heavy, and the sand is weighty, but the fool's wrath is heavier than them both.
Welcome back. So, I hope you enjoyed the guru. You had a little chance to have some of your wine, enjoy the show a little bit, and think about what you remember and what's good. You know, I go back. I think of some of the things I remember. Being a Jehovah's Witness, that was good. There was a lot of things that had happened. And when we think of it, we think that we're all a little bit different in life. Now, the Jehovah's Witness religion tries to turn us all into the same types of people, little soldiers. And for a lot of us, we but kind of bounce around in the religion. And for some of us, we just bounce right out. We're just not designed for that stuff. And for some of us, it actually helps us. Maybe we bounce around in a tunnel and it helps us. I don't know, for some of us. I know ones in the Jehovah's Witness religion that it kind of, boy, if they didn't have that religion to kind of keep them in this tunnel, this Nazi type of, this drill sergeant kind of, they wouldn't be good people. I don't know what you think, but the more I look at this whole thing, it's who am I to judge? So we accept a lot. Now we talked about Jesus a little bit here. We're going to move on, and I wanted to talk about belief, what some people believe in. And really, when we start looking around, there's all kinds of beliefs. And I think as we move on as a race of people, we become more tolerant with other people's beliefs. And this will help us to look beneath the skin, to look inside and see people for who they are. This is what kind of I think is interesting on the internet. So on the internet right now, and if I'm going to look at my chat line and see who's all on the chat. So there's a lot of people chatting, right? So everyone's chatting, but what's kind of cool about the internet is that everyone can be out chat, but no one really has to. It's not like at the Kingdom Hall where you see each other, right? Like you can throw out some really good comments there. You can say, "Hey, you idiot," but you can't do that at the Kingdom Hall. But here you can, and it's good. I think it's good to have this freedom of speech. Now, if you throw some stuff out there, sometimes YouTube will catch you. We noticed that on some videos. My good wife goes in and checks these held comments. And there's some little wars going on between our subscribers. And I thank you guys for doing all that hard work and rooting for me. I really appreciate that. But I know what you're doing is you're having your voice. And you see, everyone has a voice. Not everyone can get on and do what some of us can do. And not everyone has a situation. You see, if I had a believing wife in the organization or something, it would change everything. I couldn't be as liberal. I could maybe do it or maybe not, depending on how my house, maybe it would tear up the household, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do this work. But you see, my situation allows me to do it. In fact, this, what I realize as time goes on is this is a unique situation because we use this as part of fixing my head, fixing my faith, and my wife kept encouraging it, and now we're at this stage where we can help some other people. And that's what we're doing. We're helping people to understand. As we start to understand, we share that with you, and hopefully it helps you to understand. So here it is. Do children believe because they're told to by adults in God? Evidence suggests otherwise. Why do the majority of people across cultures and throughout history believe in God? Do you want to read this? Do you guys like reading this with me, or would you like the ocean in the background? Because I can put this on the screen here too. Where is it? There it is. So one way to address this question is to look at why it is that children acquire belief in gods. If an idea cannot be easily learned by children, then it is relatively unlikely to survive into the next generation, and it will die out. So we can explain why children are so ready to believe in gods. We will be a step closer in understanding religious beliefs more generally. It may seem that the answer is simple: indoctrination. Children believe because their parents or other adults teach them, right? Unfortunately, the story is not that simple. Fortunately, it is far more interesting. Children will believe a lot of what their parents teach them, but not everything. Try to convince a child that a tarantula is harmless, that broccoli is better food for them than crisps, or that Paul McCartney is a better musician than Miley Cyrus, and you'll likely get nowhere. Likewise, teachers have difficulty teaching many scientific insights, such as evolution by natural selection, or that solid objects such as tablets are composed almost entirely of space. Children learn things that their minds are tuned to learn more readily than things that go against that natural tuning. Development psychologists have provided evidence that children are naturally tuned to believe in gods of one sort or another. Now here it is. Children tend to see natural objects as designed or purposeful in ways that go beyond what their parents teach, as Deborah Kelman has demonstrated. Rivers exist so that we can go fishing on them. Birds are here to look pretty. Children doubt that impersonal processes can create order or purpose. Studies with children show that they expect that someone, not something, is behind natural order. No wonder that Margaret Evans found that children younger than 10 favored creationist accounts of the origins of animals over evolutionary accounts, even when their parents and teachers endorsed evolution. Authorities' testimony didn't carry enough weight to override a natural tendency. Children know humans are not behind the order, so the idea of creating God or gods makes sense to them. It's an interesting way of looking at it. Children just need adults to specify which one, which God's right. Experimental evidence, including cross-cultural studies, suggests that 3-year-olds attribute super godlike qualities to lots of different beings. Superpower, super knowledge, and super perception seem to be default assumptions. Children then have to learn that mother is fallible and dad is not all powerful and that people will die. So children may be particularly receptive to the idea of a super creator God. It fits their, how do you say that? It fits their, I guess, their predilections. Predilections. There it is, predilections. It's right up there, that word. Did I get it up high enough? No. Anyways, recent research by a few of these people suggests that children may also be predisposed to believe in a soul that persists beyond death. Interesting. That belief comes so naturally to children. That belief comes so naturally to children, it may sound like an attack on religious belief. Belief in gods is just leftover childness or a promotion of religious belief. God with the capital G has implanted a seed for belief in children. So, what both sides should agree upon is that the scientific evidence, certainly cultural inputs help fill in the details, but the child's minds are not a level playing field. They're tilted in the direction of belief. So it sounds like there's a lot of research there. So here you have it. If you guys want to help the Guardian out, you can, if you will invest into the Guardian this year. They always ask that. I have to leave these open. Sometimes you can't reopen them. But I think they do some good work. You know, the Watchtower quotes the Guardian. I seen him quote the Guardian on climate change. So they must think the Guardian's okay. Now, here's another article. Is it natural to believe in God, says Oxford study. This is kind of a shorter one. We've got lots of time. And the reason I thought this would be a good one, these guys are like a big university, so London. It says human beings have natural tendencies to believe in God and life after death, according to a 3-year-old international, I'm sorry, not a 3-year-old, but according to a 3-year international research project directed by 2 academics at a University of Oxford. So the 1.9 million pounds project, so is that how much the cost of the project? Yeah. That's a big project. 1.9 million pounds. That's like $4 million Canadian, I think. Anyways, this project involved 57 researchers who conducted over 40 separate studies in 20 countries, representing a diverse range of cultures on this study about belief in God. This is how big of a, I think this XJW channel is. People are coming out of the religion. I think we're at this time where people are really opening this topic up and exploring it, even going down to the studying how our tendency as a child is to believe in a supernatural. So I thought that's interesting. So it says here that the studies, both analytical and empirical, conclude that humans are predisposed to believe in God and an afterlife, and that both theology and atheism are reasoned responses to what is a basic impulse of the human mind, a university release said. The researchers point out that the project was not setting out to prove the existence of God or otherwise, but sought to find out whether concepts such as gods and afterlife appeared to be entirely taught or basic expressions of the human nature. The Cognition, Religion, and Theology project, led by Dr. Justin Barrett from the Center for Anthropology and Mind at Oxford University, drew on research from a range of disciplines, including anthropology, psychology, philosophy, and theology. They directed an international body of researchers conducting studies in 20 different countries that represented both traditionally religious and atheist societies. The findings are due to be published in 2 separate books. Oh, here you go. It's about selling some books. 2 separate books by psychologist Dr. Barrett in the Cognitive Science and Religion and Theology, and Born Believers in the Science of Childhood and Religion. The studies by Emily Reed and Justin Barrett suggest that children below the age of 5 find it easier to believe in some superhuman properties than to understand similar human limitations. So it's easier to believe in something that you cannot explain, than to believe in something that is similar to human limitations. So children were asked whether their mother would know the contents of a box in which she could not see. Children aged 3 believed that their mother and God would always know the contents. But by the age 4, children start to understand that their mothers are not all-seeing and all-knowing. However, children may continue to believe in all-seeing, all-knowing supernatural agents such as God or gods. And experiments involving adults conducted by Jing Zhu from Tsinghua University in China and Natalie Emons and Jesse Baring from the Queen's University, Belfast, suggest that people across many different cultures instinctively believe that some parts of their mind, soul, or spirit lives on after death. What do you think? Do you get the feeling that something lives on beyond you when you're going to die, or do you have that feeling? I'll have a drink to that. Now, the studies demonstrate that people are natural dualists. We're natural dualists, finding it easy to conceive of the separation of the mind and the body. Project director Dr. Justin Barrett from the University of Oxford Center for Anthropology and Mind said, "This project does not set out to prove God or God exists. Just because we find it easier to think in a particular way does not mean religion and society seem to work hand in hand, or foot in hand, hand and foot. Interestingly, we found that religion is less likely to thrive in populations living in cities in developed nations where there is already a strong social support network." And that's what we find in perhaps some of the Western cultures right now. Canada, the US, or a lot of the places. In fact, I think if you look at any of the growth that the Watchtower is, it's in some of the more undeveloped countries where there's no internet. The internet really ties a lot of us together, and we find that we don't need church anymore. You can get your spiritual needs just on the internet without driving anywhere, without spending any money. So it goes on to say, project co-director Professor Roger Trigg from the University of Oxford's Lan Ramsey Center said, "This project suggests that religion is not just something for a peculiar, had too much wine, peculiar few to do on Sundays instead of playing golf. Yeah, okay, so religion's not just for a few people to do on Sundays instead of playing golf. It's they're serious about it. Like when you were a Jehovah's Witness, and that's the end of the article. I was serious about it. I believed in it. I played golf too a little bit, but not much. Wasn't good at it. Lots of Jehovah's Witnesses will play golf, I think. But yeah, I don't know. History says Jesus was real. I believe the Bible's doctrine is full of holes. I'm not sure about the whole Yahweh thing and why Jesus didn't talk about Yahweh. I think there's lots of research. So this brings me, as we do more research, you can go on the internet. And I went on the internet. Let me see. Yeah, that's good. So I was going on the internet. You go to XJW, you can find things. Jehovah's Witnesses, a gentle self-deprogramming guide, undoing the undue influence of the Watchtower. So here's Frank Anon is the witness or the author of this one. Frank Anon. So there's a book that you can get. I think that it's a deprogramming guide. And this was written by a ex-Jehovah's Witness. So I think that's important if you can get in, and there's a dash of humor in here. This guy's a really good writer. I was writing about it. It's not an apostate book, nor is it a religious work. Rather, it's a logical, concise guide to relieving the undue influence exercised over Jehovah's Witnesses by the Watchtower Society. After setting to rest the notion of the faithful and discreet slave, the book investigates three areas where Watchtower doctrine impacts the lives of witnesses: medical decisions, shunning, and child endangerment. Each chapter consists of 3 sections, and how the doctrine affects the lives of witnesses, reasons why the doctrine may not be sound, and undoing the undue influence in your own life. A perfect gift to gift yourself or anyone you know who may be involved in this religion. So I think that's a must. If you have Kindle, there's no cost to it. This is all kind of new to me, all of these things. My wife is more up on this. If you have to order it by paper, which we don't encourage because it knocks trees down, Watchtower wants you to order their stuff by paper, and it knocks trees down. But go with the Kindle if you can. So, anyways, you can. There's others that you can get now. I kept going, and then there's this other one by Steve McRoberts, "Falling in Truth: The Education of Jehovah's Witnesses" paperback. And this is by Steve McRolla. He's another author, and this is a young man falls headlong into a religious sect at a time when he should be falling in love. At first, a religion meets all of his needs to belong, but little by little he begins to discover holes in the spiritual paradise. Through a soul-searching process, he learns the real truth and faces the most difficult decision of his life when he finds that his belief conflicts with his love. So that sounds like quite a book to read, and you can get that again for $0 if you have a Kindle account. Now, I went further and I was looking on this Steve McRoberts. He has The Cure for Fundamental: Why the Bible Cannot Be the Word of God. Empathy Rising, there's a collection of poems. I was going to take you to look at a poem. I think we have time, 9 o'clock. Falling in Truth: The Education of Jehovah's Witnesses, again by Steve Roberts. And Layers of Truth, Steve Roberts. So here's an author, I don't know if any of you guys heard of Eternal Eyes Endlessly Seeking, Steve Roberts. So, and then it goes to someone else here. So all of these books are available on Kindle for free. So there's a lot in the XJW community if you want to read some books. And I think it's important to deprogram. That's important. I think reading some fictional stuff is good too. And let me see, what else does Steve have? So yeah, I would just put in Steve McRoberts, JW, and all of these books come up on Amazon. So now I'm going on to Watchtower Help Club. Last week we talked about Watchtower Help Admin. It's a new site I found. It has 722 subscribers, 6 videos. I recommend watching the near-death experience of Anthony Robbins, or Anthony Morris, Tony Morris. That is an excellent video, but we did that last week. But this week I was just going to look on the Watchtower Help Club, which is a link right off of his site, right off that YouTube site. And it has a whole bunch of stuff. It has these guys here. He has all the governing bodies singing. Here it is.
Talking weeks a night, the world will all be so supplied. For from the weak of comprehend, the last place them will through the end. The mighty contract quantified, the ancient words is over.
It's the last days of the last days of the last days of the last days.
And this time we this time we really try. I sanctified we had it when the time was short. You told me stand no stars, no children, time submit by now. You have some great grandkids. The generation could not lie, but when they died, we did not lie. And on Aladdin with extension beyond our human comprehension. We will all but touch the past. Today we know our truth will last. From the heavens coming soon, perhaps before we end this June.
It's the last days of the last days of the last days of the last days.
And this time we this time we really try.
Okay, there we go. Back in the studio. So that was quite interesting. Just to give that to you guys again here, this is Watchtower Help Club. It's the same site as the Watchtower Watchtower Help Admin, and it's a fairly new creator. Now, I did talk to the creator, and he doesn't really want to be out in the open. So would rather just be in the background doing this wonderful work he is doing. So I would like to say that here's how we all feel, Steve. So here it is. Yeah. So you give Steve a big hand. Now I'm gonna take that off. That's my little voice screen. So this is if you guys want to subscribe, Watchtower Helper is kind of what it is, or Watchtower Help Admin, and just go there, subscribe to his channel, watch his videos. He's done some really terrific work on this. I haven't seen anything like this. Now, I heard he's working on some new stuff, so we'll have to wait out and see what happens. And what else do we have to share? I wanted to go back to this Watchtower Help Club because it's not only about, you can see all his videos there, you can see him on YouTube, but he has a lot of articles here, like the Resurrection and Error-Filled Doctrine, a 5-part series here. I was looking at some of this stuff, some really good work. Let's see if it pulls up here. Here's what it looks like. I'll take my face off the screen here. And this is kind of how some of this work was. This is just almost like reading a Watchtower or an Awake magazine. Like this is certainly the work that you'd get from a Watchtower writing committee. And here this gentleman is on the other side. This ex-Jehovah's Witness is on the other side. And now he's helping people with whatever he knows how to come out. And some really good work talking about, Abraham Lincoln, and like I haven't even began to comb this the depth of all of this research that went into this site. So apparently there's something like 11 years of research and work that went into a lot of his stuff here. So Jehovah, the God for Christians, it goes on to talk about that. Really, all this research that this person has done. Now, this person was working in the Watchtower. I'm gonna get out of here a little bit, and this person was working in the Watchtower for a long time here, and it goes back to when he was 18. And he was got invited into New York Bethel as working with the writing committee. And you can see why when you look through some of the work here. And in 3 years, he just left. He realized that it wasn't the right place to be. Some things happened in his personal life with his sister, and she got disfellowshipped unjustly. So, and then he questioned things. And what was interesting when I read the story is he wrote, he was in the writing committee, working in New York Bethel in the writing committee, realizing, there's discrepancies and he couldn't reconcile. So he went forth, wrote a big long letter to the brothers, the faithful slave. Apparently, you were supposed to be able to approach them at that time, and they kicked him out. They said, "This is not the place for you," and he was done. So proof again that you can't question a cult. And at the end of the day, I go pretty hard on these guys. They're all cults. But this guy did a lot of work showing how you can view this, and to me, in one movie here, like I look at this movie, this near-death experience of Anthony Morris. Well, it explains the blood. It explains a little bit. Jesus is not the same as Yahweh. They're two different gods. And I went to his help site here, and let me see if I have it up here. Here I am. Now, if we go back to his help site, there's all kinds of subjects. I was looking at You Can't Live Forever on a Paradise Earth. There's a good one to watch or to look at. A Jehovah's Witness Dilemma Part 3. There's all kinds of stuff. The stand-up comedy of the governing body. And when you really look at the governing body and that video that he made there, they are like a stand-up comedy show. And there's a couple of them here. He has a stand-up comedy of the governing body. I'm not going to play them. You guys will all have to check out the site. How the Overlapping Generation was revealed. Here's another one. And the work that went into each of these characters, and a really good job of depicting the governing body. The Song of the Governing Body, that way. And here's that book again, right on this site. Jehovah's Witnesses, A Gentle Self-Deprogramming Guide. I don't know. I think he probably wrote this book, maybe. Is it on here? No. But it is, it was the first one we looked at right here. It says it's by Frank Annan is the author, but I'm not really sure. But anyways, it's on his site, this book, A Gentle Self-Deprogramming Guide. So you can click that. I think this is all worth looking at. So that pretty much brings our show to an end this evening, folks. We are going to go back to our other screen here. Well, we'll go back to the studio for a little bit here. But in bringing the show to an end, we're going to put on some reggae music. Now, with the reggae music, I don't know if you guys were on Sunday, but we tried out Sunday at 3 o'clock. We called it Sunday Sect Show, S-E-C-T. You know, because we're all in sects. Everything that comes off Catholicism is really a sect, Christendom. Jehovah's Witnesses is a sect in that manner. If you don't want to call them a cult, it's a sect. Mormons. So there's lots of sects. So we thought Sunday, according to YouTube, most of our listeners are on, most of you guys are on the weekends. So we were thought maybe Saturday, we'd go on Saturday at what, 2? Something like that. So look for us next Saturday, and what we're going to feature on that show is coming out of Saturday Sect Show. And so if you want to get involved with that, we're going to look at, cults, sects coming out. I don't know. It's a good subject, because that's really what we're all doing, is we're coming out of all of these religions. And a lot of people don't like to use the word cult. I didn't at first either. It was abrasive to me. I didn't feel I was in a cult. But when you look at the bite model, it really fits. So, but maybe I would rather call it a sect. I remember back in the day they had Sunday Sex Show. It's not that. Nothing to do with that. Sorry to disappoint you. But anyways, we're gonna end up here. And I thought, let's go to the ocean. We used this on our Sunday show, and Guru was on there. I gave you he read a little bit of that Bible reading there with the drum dance. Did that on Sunday, and that's kind of our own thing. So here we go. Here's the ocean. We'll give you the ocean view, and we'll give you some reggae music to end our show. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. See, that turns it down a bit.
Sound and me say he run the town. My sound, it a jungle sound. My sound make the crowd gather round. My sound, it a freedom sound. Bad boy sound and this and bad boy sound. Wow, tell you. Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.